Hello and welcome to This Week at the Movies. I'm Matt,
I'm Eric.
and this week we will be racing to get to our point because it is Gran Turismo week. That's right, the movie that was supposed to come out earlier in August, and then they decided to slow play with a few preview screenings in the hope that they would generate a massive opening weekend box office, is finally officially released. It did finish number one, $100,000 ahead of Barbie at 17.3 million. Probably not the opening they were hoping for, but I have to tell you, I thought this movie kicked a lot of butt around the track. I didn't have incredibly high expectations as someone who has never played Gran Turismo, the PlayStation game, upon which this draws its name and its inspiration, which is also the true story of Jan Moddenborough, who was a great Gran Turismo player that got a chance to go to an academy and got picked out to drive for Team Nissan, or if you're Orlando Bloom, it's Nissan, because I almost did not realize it was the car company until they showed us the logo based on the way he was pronouncing everything. But these things happen. And even though we can't see Chief Hopper battling people in the Upside Down, we get to see him here helping mold a young racer. And that really worked for me. But Eric, did it really work for you?
Yeah, it was an absolute blast. I feel like there was a really good amount of marriage here of Neil Blomkamp's visuals and a very grounded story that a creative like that, is trying to do justice to. And so he exercised a lot of restraint, and I feel like that helped things overall. I love the structure of this movie. We're going to talk about this a little bit later, but it's a little bit familiar. But I feel like they're sort of putting familiar beats to a real world story, and it just happens to line up in a certain way. And there are certain things that I wish we spent a little more time on, and I have like his relationship with his family and whatnot. It just kind of, there's a familiar structure of, I don't support you, I see you and I support you now. Like, you kind of know how it's going to go, and you're like, wait, this is a real human. This isn't like a Hollywood creation. This story isn't, but this script is. There's one thing that I will say: the product element, the fact that this is a video game movie. This is somehow a true story, and it is the IP that plays the PlayStation logo before it comes out, that is for that video game. It's a little bit of a commercial for Nissan and the game. It's just a little bit too much to me of going about like, this is the most realistic and amazing game ever, that shows like the fidelity of the cars and the one-to-one is amazing and whatnot. And it's all kind of there for purposes of telling the story, but it kind of takes really great visual moments, like the reconstruction of the car around Yan while he's driving, and kind of makes it feel like they're showing off a game engine. But it never took me out of enjoying it for what it was. None of that ever took me out of enjoying it for what it was. It was an absolute thrill ride. The performances pretty much across the board were exactly what they needed to be. Never too hammy, never too melodramatic. Like, it just worked. Like, this is a strong one thumb up from me. The only way that I would give it a 2 thumbs up is if there was just a little bit more like of a balance towards what was that kid's life like, and how did he feel about the challenges he was facing, over like, this is our product and this is our goal and let's steamroll towards the goal. It was a very fast movie, and if there had just been a little bit, I would have been like gaga over the movie, and it was great anyways.
I get what you're saying about the products. I would say, for me, if you didn't know this was based on a true story, it would have very much felt like the Gran Turismo version of Transformers.
Yeah,
where they're buying. But I think him being so good at the game and the realism of the game is actually integral to how this real story comes about, because
It is.
his dream was to be a race car driver, and he was a poor kid who they do a great job of capturing that racing, especially that kind of European, road course racing. You pretty much have to have a connection or money to be able to get into it, and to show that he was able to build all these skills. Because like, you screw up one of those cars, that's like $1 million repair.
Yeah.
So it's, you don't have a lot of shots to practice, but showing that he was able to kind of do that, and the realism that they're putting into some of these games. I know we've seen stories about police using some of these first person shooters for training, and military using it some for training, because of how hyper real those kinds of things are, which raises other questions about what that's doing to just regular people's ability.
Yeah.
From a sports standpoint, we've had NFL players talk about playing Madden and how real it is, and how much they've put into. We tend to, especially older adults, probably tend to remember video games like, I don't know if you're old enough to have played Mario on the old Nintendo, but those 8-bit graphics. I mean, I went and got a Nintendo emulator when they came out, because there's something simple and fun about just like those 8-bit graphics and jumping around those worlds. But games that they have now are radically different than that. And I thought this was an interesting exploration. I was blown away by the direction and the production too, because I'll be honest, Neil Blomkamp has made some interesting films, but none of them have really resonated with me. So actually, when I saw that this was about a guy who played video games that got into racing, from him, and just some of the way they cut together those trailers, I was like, this will be all right.
His track record is like District 9, Elysium, Chappie, and the one that just came out
really
recently that no one wanted
9
to talk about. Oh man, you are already off to a bad start then.
Yeah, District 9 I just thought was all right. So that when I say I haven't really resonated with any of his films, I haven't really resonated. But when a racing film hits, it hits hard, and that's what I had to come back to with this. There have been a few, racing films that I've seen over the years that just really click and nail it for me. And I think it's true a lot of sports movies in general. A sports movie can be really bad. Most of them are just okay. You're kind of going by the numbers, but when it really hits that sweet spot, it hits in such a deeply emotional way. And that's how I felt watching this movie. I am actually 2 full thumbs up. I gave it one of the highest scores that I've given this year. I currently have it as my number 4 film of 2023. And all of my top 6 have come out since May during the summer. We have had some really spectacular and diverse films this summer. And this one was probably the most surprising to me. Again, because I didn't have incredibly high expectations, and I don't mean that in a negative way. Like I thought it was going to be bad. I just thought, I know what this is. This will be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And there was something Archie Madukwe, who plays Jan Martinborough. I thought he was great. He really draws you in. But I thought David Harbour, as kind of that mentor, was incredible. I actually put him on my short list of best supporting actor ones that I've enjoyed from this year. I thought what he did was great, and the way that he brought the character to life. And it was those two really, and the incredible way that they built the tension into these races and went to these courses. A couple of years ago, we had Ford versus Ferrari, and the big climax of that takes place at the 24-hour of Le Mans, which is, if you know anything about racing, just this really intense gold standard. And the fact that kind of the crowning moment in this movie takes place at Le Mans, I was I was all bought in. There are some tropes that felt familiar to me from racing films that I dearly love.
Mhm.
But it all just kind of worked for me. And I love the performances, like you said. I love the creativity. I liked that technique that they use both of building a race car around him while he's playing the game, and then later of doing the inverse when he is in the actual race, deconstructing the car around him and putting him back in front of that monitor, and then building him back into the car, showing how he was pulling on those skills. The fact that the real Jan Martinborough was the stunt driver for his character, was kind of beautiful, getting to
Mhm.
participate in this. But it's a really feel good story. I think the fact that it's a true story plays a lot into how much of a kick it is, because this is the kind of thing you couldn't make up. Like you said, it would have felt like much more of a commercial advertisement, except that it is a celebration of all the hard work. They really got the real guy who makes Gran Turismo, whose idea it was to make Gran Turismo, who puts all that time into getting the realism. It was a celebration of those efforts and that work. And sure, Nissan got a lot of publicity out of this, but you know what? They were the ones that took a chance and gave this kid a shot,
Yeah.
and found a star, an actual star in the racing world. So that didn't, I mean, if it was a fake story, that probably would have come off the same way as like the fact that
Yeah.
you're watching Apple TV Plus and everybody has an iPhone and an iPad,
See, yeah,
or
that's
the
the
fact
thing
you're
is
watching TV on CBS and everybody's driving a brand new Chevy.
right. But that's the thing is this movie won. It earned everything that it does in the movie. And you said it. I mean, when a movie that is like a racing or a boxing movie, particularly something like racing, I think succeeds, you're watching a testament to human achievement and success, and you get to enjoy some of that success. It's like celebrating the best of some of what we can be, and there is no more uplifting, energizing, charging thing than that. And so, yeah, for it to do it even at all right, it's a huge win. And I think the choice for a studio to go, we have this ability to make a video game property. What is the right story to tell? Maybe they even had a script that was about a race car driver who went through some of these beats. And then they were like, hey guys, there's a real person who went through some of these beats, and just it was perfect. Like it was the perfect way to handle this story.
Yeah, I mean, and it worked. You did raise an interesting point. It would have been interesting probably to know a little bit more about Jan's childhood and growing up, but even with the amount they put in there, that scene when he and Jaimin Hansu come together before the race,
Yeah,
very dusty. Very,
Jimon Hansu and David Harbour. I don't know. I know from David Harbour, he's been working for years now with kids, supporting child actors on sets for like months at a time, getting performances out of them. And so he was made. He's been crafted as an expert for this role, and he totally earns it. Jimon Hansu was a bit more of a surprise for me. That like, yeah, you're right. You get a little like, oh no, I'm good. I'm not gonna cry. That's fine. When it's yeah.
sorry, I think an apocalyptic level of rain just began out here for reasons. I was like, what is that noise? um, well, we mentioned this joins the pantheon of some classic racing movies. And if this one got you all hyped up, and you want to redirect that energy, we thought we would end today by bringing up a couple of our favorite racing movies from the past. And the first one, I'll let Eric go. Little bit of a different vibe.
Still a true story.
Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby. Why do you love it?
There was a really funny. This movie was on my mind recently because there was an article that I assumed was clickbait or fake or made by like a harddrive.net or something like that, where someone interviewed Christopher Nolan and asked him, "What is your remote drop movie, meaning when you're flipping through TV channels, what is the movie that will make you stop and keep watching and drop the remote? And he mentioned Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby. And when they asked him, "Are you for real?" he said, "If you're not first, you're last." This supposedly really happened in real life, and few things have brought me more joy this year than hearing that statement.
You know what's great for Christopher Nolan? My remote drop movie is The Dark Knight, which is why I've probably seen at
No
least
kidding.
pieces of it 150 times, because there was a period when it was constantly on TNT.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So Talladega Nights. It's funny. You'll see. Other than the having to find him, when you meet Ricky Bobby, he's on top, right? He's already the successful, and so unlike one of the other movies that we're going to talk about, and unlike Gran Turismo, this isn't the story of someone having to come up from the bottom. It's the story of someone on top who gets injured and loses himself and has to refine his way to success. And in that sense, it's an Adam McKay comedy. People aren't trying to learn or grow as characters. Like it's just a hilarious movie with just enough freedom in that sort of era of improv comedy movies for like Sacha Baron Cohen and John C. Reilly and everybody to shine. And particularly, I always just call him Bill Lumbergh, but as his father, that actor.
Oh man.
Oh,
Yeah, no, I know who you're talking about now.
it's
It's
just
totally left my mind. I'm gonna look it up for you.
like the everything from the children to like the higher budget like set pieces. That movie is just such a joy to just like
Gary Cole.
Gary Cole. It forces my brain to turn off. I feel like I'm never aware of what time it was when I start the movie, and I only become aware that I'm still alive when the movie's over because my brain is just done. And it's like a thrill. It's like the opposite of why you watch a racing movie. You want a racing movie because you want to feel drive, purpose, focus, and success. And Talladega Nights is just like, nah, just chill. Just yeah. It's
I
so
mean, that's
bizarre.
the same reason I'm gonna in a couple of hours here watch Winning Time.
Yeah.
Which is another Adam McKay. Not only do I love the Lakers, but you can't see enough chest hair on John C. Reilly, as Dr. Jerry Buss. But yeah, it's a fun Will Ferrell movie. I mean, fittingly, maybe we should close today with our prayer to sweet baby infant Jesus, just the tiny, which is the one that you see posted almost. I swear that's a meme that comes up almost every Sunday during football season. When you get toward the end of the game, if you're on fan message boards, somebody posts like on there.
Yep.
Well, you went for a little bit of the lighter side of racing. I will say mine's not devoid of comedy because there are some fun moments, but mine is Days of Thunder, which is actually a movie I thought of incredibly, the Tom Cruise collection. I thought of while we were watching Gran Turismo because there are a lot of beats in the way the story comes together that ironically fit the kind of Days of Thunder motif, especially when he goes through that crash and needs his mentor to kind of push him back on the track. And when Jan's first in the car on his first race back and he sort of encounters a tough situation on the track and he's paralyzed for a moment, I really thought of Days of Thunder. And it's people enjoy making fun of Tom Cruise or maybe dismissing Tom Cruise movies, especially in that range from the mid 80s to the end of the 90s, where they were these big blockbusters. This movie is directed by Tony Scott, who gave us the original Top Gun, who's done a lot of those kind of movies. It was kind of famously the movie where Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman first got together because they play actually love interests in here. Robert Duvall plays kind of the crotchety, fun, pit crew leader here. It's a little bit about NASCAR. You have some of the iconic statements. I can't watch a NASCAR game race without thinking rubbing is racing, things that have come out of there. But it's typical like spectacle 1990, which is when it was released, but it just works for me. I've enjoyed it for 33 years.
Yep. It's if Gran Turismo was a Hollywood product, but instead of selling a video game and Nissan, they're selling Tom Cruise.
Yeah, and this was a big era for him, but he's so good in the
He
part. He's
is.
got a
He's
natural charisma. His back and forth with Robert Duvall, I mean, their kind of friendship and they're going back and forth. And I mean, there's just a whole bunch of fun things that work in here. You almost have like the injury slash death that's close to him, like Top Gun. I mean, there are some formulaic beats. I understand, but
yeah.
the
Well,
racing
honestly,
action works.
I don't know how formulaic it was at the time. I feel like that movie always feels a little fresh to me. I feel like when you're watching a movie, sometimes you can tell when something is repeated or familiar or sounds like disingenuous, and when something feels like an original idea. Like watching Jaws to me never feels tired, even though you've heard those lines a million times, because they've always captured like the first time you were going to hear it in that context on camera. Like, and that's something I think that makes classic movies hold up over time more than some movies that try and like update things or,
I think I just mean like there was a. It's hard to disagree with the people who say there's a period of Tom Cruise's career where you had the same kind of story beats frequently.
Oh, yeah.
He's the outsider trying to
Yeah.
break in that becomes great. He has mentor figure. He finds an unlikely romance from somebody who's connected to his work situation. He has either a colleague or a cohort who suffers a tragedy that then, I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I mean. There are beats that if you were talking about what are some central, if we were going to put Top Gun in a NASCAR movie, what are the story beats, even though use of music and some of the shots, and of course same director. I mean, that was Tony Scott too. That was kind of one of the things that made him famous. Tony Scott did a whole bunch of really fun, energetic films in that period too. I'm not going to claim that it's incredibly deep, but I love it.
Yep.
And if you watched Gran Turismo, you will probably feel a lot of the story beats. So, if you didn't know Gran Turismo was based on a true story, you'd almost think that PlayStation ripped off Days of Thunder for a new generation.
Yeah.
Because they hit a lot of the story beats that are.
Yeah. I feel like the only core thing is that in Gran Turismo, if the kid was not a real human being, the character is like down on his luck, coming from nowhere, rags to riches. Versus Tom Cruise is always sort of, he has to do that. He has to earn his place and he has to, do that journey.
Tom Cruise, but he's always his dad died tragically.
Yeah, and he's
he has to follow the legacy. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like immediately in Days of Thunder, they're like, who's this guy? And then he gets on and he like beats their top racer, and they're like, oh, like, that's one of the great things I appreciate about like movies like Gran Turismo or some boxing movies like Creed and whatnot is the transformation and the hard work to succeed at something and to show that is possible,
Well, that's a wrap on Racing Week here on this
almost
week.
A wrap on the summer.
Indeed, which brings us to next week is Labor Day weekend. If you didn't know already, now you can start making those plans. September comes on Friday for all of us. And we have looked at some incredible movies this summer, but there are still a few gems that we hadn't yet had time to talk about. And next week, we are going to touch on a couple of our favorites or gems from the summer that we have not yet touched on. So that'll be something for you to look at for when you're looking for movies. We are about to the time of year where all that stuff is dropping onto VOD and onto streaming services to make it even easier to catch up with some of those movies. And since the strike is ongoing, you can't be looking forward to seeing any new TV shows anytime soon. Content starting to slow to a crawl. They've even started bumping movies. Eric's most anticipated movie of the rest of 2023 is now his most anticipated movie of 2024.
Yeah.
What a rough week. And if you didn't realize, we were talking about Dune 2, which has the spice has been cast into the future.
Yeah. Dune
And
2 Sand Boogaloo.
people were surprised that they're keeping Aquaman 2 in this year. And I was like, that's because Warner Brothers doesn't think it's going to be good. So they don't really. No movies have seemingly done poorer at the box office than DC's superhero films this year. So
Yeah.
I'm sure Aquaman will continue that trend. But next week, we will talk about a couple of hidden gems. I'm looking forward to hearing some of Eric's, because he is much more of a scary movie aficionado these days than I am. Whereas I have not met a depressing film that I haven't committed my heart to in the last few years. As my wife tells me all the time, why do you watch all this depressing stuff? I'm like, I don't know. It just comes to me. It finds me. So that'll be something to look forward to next week. Until then, enjoy your time at the movies.